Tonight, I ask the question, who are the real racists here? And how do we identify them? Is there a pattern to a racist? What is the true anatomy of a racist? While I was gone, I told my staff to contact the experts to understand the patterns of race and discrimination throughout history. I wanted to see if there was any way to easily identify racists, and especially the ones that really have power and can cause trouble. We studied the works of leading scholars in psychology, such as British social psychologist Henry Jaffel, Dr. Gordon Willard Allport, and also we spoke with today's leading psychiatric experts, such as Dr. Keith Abloh and others. We asked them, do racists have anything in common? How do you know? Because everybody on all sides is being called a racist today. How do you know one when you see one? I really didn't think we would get a clear-cut answer, but we did. It turns out they have a lot in common. Three qualities that are very important in making somebody a racist. And so tonight we'll look at those qualities using Adolf Hitler, Louis Farrakhan, and David Duke.
We wouldn't even have our race down here if it was not for the Ku Klux Klan. We're going to get to the point where the white people in this country are going to be masters of their own destiny again. And all the work and all the effort they can put against us and put on us is not going to affect us. We're going to stand proudly and honestly and courageously, and we're not going to stop until we win.
So who is the future coming to? You white supremacists who think because you're white, you the goose that laid the golden egg. Come on.
We're not anti-black so much as we're pro-white. And there's 1,000 different organizations, it seems like, that are working for the interest of the blacks and other minorities. And we're simply an organization that's working for the interest and the ideals and the culture of the white people.
Who runs the big publishing houses in America? Who is masterful in all forms of communication? Who is controlling the movie picture industry? Who's controlling the record industry?
Do you believe the Holocaust happened? Do you believe the Holocaust happened? Yes or no?
Mama, I don't think I can actually make a good decision about the Holocaust till I'm allowed to read and hear every point of view. How can we know the truth about any point of view?
If you're going to deny black people the help of their own brother, then we're going to rise up against you.
I see nothing wrong with having schools in the black community oriented toward black people, for black interests, for their particular environment and heritage and culture and other needs. I see nothing wrong with schools in the white community for white students. I see nothing wrong with letting neighborhoods be all white if they choose to be, or be all black. We forcibly integrate, and I think that's been a disaster.
There are three traits, and we'll get to them here in a second, but I'd like to add a fourth. Racists usually hate the Jews, whether they're black or white. They'll unite on one thing, their hatred for the Jews. We know racism embodied Adolf Hitler, who said, quote, "The final consequence is not merely that the people lose all their freedom under the domination of the Jews, but in the end, these parasites themselves disappear." Hatred of the Jews. Three very different leaders. Three men from history with different backgrounds who hate different people who come from different parts of the world. But their characteristics of leading others to hate are all exactly the same. They have three things in common, and here they are. One, the collective. They don't see people as individuals. They see them as groups only. They're unable to judge a situation fairly or objectively is the second trait. And the third, they seek power by creating conflict and dividing people for personal gain. Racists put everybody into groups. That's the first one. They don't see individuals. This is why the collective is so important. When somebody talks about collective salvation, this is the problem with socialism in the end. This is why National Socialism or communism always ends up with mass slaughter. because they don't see the individual. They don't judge a man by the content of his character, just by the color of his skin or his race. They can't differentiate between the actual people in those groups.
You know, when Trayvon Martin was first shot, I said that this could have been my son. Another way of saying that is Trayvon Martin could have been me 35 years ago.
Well, let me say this. Trayvon Martin could have been my son, too. You see, here's the problem. I'm not seeing the individual, and then I'm only seeing one aspect. I'm not seeing the individual, and I'm then not also seeing the human. Trayvon Martin could have been my son as well. He could have been me as well 35 years ago. Except that's not exactly what the president meant. He doesn't mean we're all in the same boat. 35 years ago, the president was living in Hawaii with his grandparents. So 35 years ago, things weren't the same as they are now. It makes no sense, because even if you say, well, he was living in the South 35 years ago, things are better than they were 35 years ago. But in the president's world, I'm black, Trayvon is black, and so he could have been me and I am him. Isn't that as bad as saying that all black people look the same? The two have nothing in common except the color of their skin, and they were both male. Well, I'm a male, so he could have been me too. I'm a human, so he could have been me too. One of us is looking at the world exclusively through the prism of black versus white, and nothing else seems to matter. And it becomes very, very dangerous when someone perceives a threat from another tribe. What they do is they foist the blame onto every member of that group, regardless of their involvement. And then you begin to split society in half. And you create victims and victimizers, and that's it. And the whole concept of race really is just to split. When people talk about race, they say, we're in the same race. That's what the president was just saying. He could have been me, and I could have been him. But what does he actually mean? Does he mean the skin color or the nationality? Because, no, it couldn't be that. How about religion? I don't know. How about ideology? No. The race. Be it the African race, the German race, the Jewish race, the Aryan race, the Arab race. It doesn't matter. They're all different terms, but they're using the same last term, race. They refer to completely different parts of who you are. In its broadest sense, usually when people say the word race, they mean we share similar physical similarities. But still, members of the same race don't always look alike. The Nazis were shocked to find out that many Jews looked just like Aryans. How? They said, well, there's got to be something in the blood. And so they poured vast amounts of money and research and time trying to prove that there is some sort of Jewish marker in people's blood. In the U.S., we did very similar things. Slave owners were surprised to learn that African Americans, some of them look completely European. So they came up with the one-drop rule. This happened in the South, which meant that having one black ancestor, i.e. a single drop of black blood, was enough to make you black. In America, we have learned to look beyond race. It hasn't always been this way, and we are regressing. We were doing really, really well. But those numbers of how we feel about each other have been cut in half. But we don't look for some sort of a bad marker in somebody's blood to see who somebody is. We learned from Martin Luther King to look at Americans, all Americans, and judge a man by the content of his character, not by the color of his skin, which means not looking at the group, but as you would judge somebody as the individual. Are they a good person or a bad person? Are they generous? Or are they selfish? Individuals have the freedom to choose who they are and then who they associate with. But not to racists. If you associate with somebody outside of somebody a racist believes you should be, you've sold out your race. And that's not America. We're supposed to create an identity for ourselves because we are all as unique as our fingerprint. So this idea of judging people by race, it is not just misleading, it is dangerous. Why? Well, this kind of thinking forms the initial foundations for racism. The idea that all black people have something in common with each other that no white person can share at all. Or that all white people, we all have something in common that no black person's going to understand or share. That has no semblance in the real world. That is the thinking of Neanderthal man. But in the psychological world, unfortunately, it does play a role. It creates what psychologists call an out group. All of a sudden, another group of people are not our kind, they're out. And so we start to see an us versus them, and then we slip into a conversation that leads us to believe that they are homogenous, they're not made up of a group of individuals, they're all the same, them. And then we begin to think that we are different from them, and we start to view the others as inferior. We start to see the characteristics of others as contemptible. Oh. Now, it's human to make categorizations to a certain extent. It's human to create certain boundaries and categorize people to a certain extent because there are people who you don't want anything to do with, but hopefully it's because of their character, not the color of their skin or their race. They don't represent anything you want to be associated with. And that's fine as long as it's not about race. It's okay to want to maintain a positive image of your own group. Okay, good. My church, my family, my neighborhood, my community. I want to feel good about my country. You want others to view you positively, and that's good. But how do you maintain that positive image of your group? That's what classifies you as a racist. Do you promote your country or your town or your church by leading through example? Or do you do it by putting other people down who are different? Well, you're not as good. Do you encourage strife by continually bringing up racial differences? Do you promote your own image by pitting groups against others, by emphasizing and picking at that division? Because that's what racists do. When a racist looks at a diverse population, such as here in the U.S., they see a bunch of different groups. They don't see individuals. They see multiculturalism at play. They see victims and victimizers. They see exploitation, but they never see individuals. They will blame one group for another's misfortunes, and they always see an opportunity to advance their agenda by emphasizing strife. True leaders don't do this. True leaders see potential in the individual and seeks to raise up the individual and tells them, don't listen to people like that. Don't listen to people who try to keep you down. True leaders seek to inspire. After the Zimmerman verdict, Al Sharpton, President Obama, Jesse Jackson, and many others came out calling anyone who stood up for Zimmerman's acquittal a racist. But why are these people racist? Well, it brings us to the second quality. Racists are unable to recognize the truth. They blame others, and they do not judge objectively. Sometimes their accusations have legitimacy, other times they don't. But the truth, regardless of what it is, has no effect on what they believe. For instance, you're a white male accused of committing a crime. Do you trust handing your decision over to Clarence Thomas? Fine. Do you trust handing a decision in your fate over to Al Sharpton? No. Well, wait a minute. Couldn't be a racist. There must be something different because they're both black. Now, do you think Clarence Thomas is going to give white and black a fair hearing? I do. Condoleezza Rice? I do. Al Sharpton? Most likely his decision would be based on the color of your skin, not whether or not you actually committed the crime. Finally, the last trait is they seek to divide others for personal gain. Racism is usually at its worst during difficult times. You can look at the Great Depression. You can look at the times that Woodrow Wilson was in. Racism was very, very bad. But the Roaring '20s, the KKK almost went away. People never want to blame themselves for their hardships. So if somebody comes along and says, look, your problem's not your problem, it's them. The leaders of the race industry know this.